Hi guys, welcome to the Studio 134 podcast. I'm Alec.
And I'm Zaya.
And this week we're talking about following Jesus and practical steps you can take to apply that to your life. Zaya, what have you been getting out of this Following Jesus series so far that we've been talking about?
I definitely think it helps to hear other people's stories and how they perceive following Jesus, just because oftentimes we look at our own relationship with God and we kind of get tunnel focused, which doesn't do us any good when we're trying to help other people follow Jesus. Like, we kind of need their tools in our toolbox for someone else.
Yeah. What do you mean by like tunnel focused?
Tunnel focused as in the way that I follow Jesus can sometimes be the only way I think there is to follow Jesus. And in reality, there are some like core doctrine that we follow, yes, but the practical side of things doesn't have to look the same. So it's not cookie cutter faith.
Yeah. What does it look like to you to follow Jesus?
Yeah, so following Jesus, the first thing that I looked into, what does the actual word follow mean? We use it all the time, but sometimes we use words without knowing the depth of definition. So to follow means to go or to come after a person or thing proceeding ahead of you. And I think that's interesting because usually when we think of follow, we think of like little ducks and they're like calmly following after their mother. But in reality, this has a level of like urgency to it. To like come after something is to like almost chase after it. So I think like in terms of following Jesus, we're not just following after him like calmly and Peter like just following him like down to a stream or something, but we're chasing after him. There's a bit of urgency, a bit of fire behind our step.
What does that like practically look like in your life?
So there's like the obvious one of like reading your Bible, praying, which those are our foundations. I think that's important in every believer's life. But one thing specifically that I like to do is intentionally asking God to be leading me in every situation. And what that practically looks like is like if I go to Walmart, I'm like, okay, God, like you're moving in someone's life today and in this spot and in this area. So help me be aware of where you're moving so I can follow you and partner with you in your movement in someone else's life today. Because the reality is God is always on the move and we are not aware of what he's doing in someone else's life unless we ask him. And why not when he's given us an open opportunity to do so? Absolutely.
I forget to do that sometimes in just the little mundane tasks of the day, like going to the store to get groceries or whatever. Like,
and how many times, like even us, do we need a random pop of encouragement?
Right.
That if someone else didn't listen to the Holy Spirit, like urging them to be like, hey, like go check on that person, like we would be at a deficit. So why would we assume that someone else isn't relying on us to listen to God?
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, that's something to think about for sure. I like that. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? Like, how did you find Jesus? Why did you make that decision to follow him?
This one was a little hard, I'm not gonna lie, because no matter how many times I've tried to sit down and write down my like testimony, I'm like, which part do I want to focus on? What is like all the things come into my head. But I think the thing that I'm going to stick on the most is when I was about 17, 18, I grew up in church technically. Like I went to church with my mom all the time. My whole family wasn't saved by any means, but the thing that saved me was realizing that God was never hiding from me, if that makes sense. We had a lot of interesting situations growing up, and I felt like God was far away all the time, and I was like, I don't understand, like, is he like closing his eyes, or like what's happening right now? And so as I got older, I realized God was never hiding, but I can't expect God to take someone else's free will of deciding whether or not to do the good thing or the right thing. And so that's when I came to terms with my faith and was like, okay, no, God isn't evil. He's not like punishing me. He's not hiding from me. He's just good.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like most people, I mean, maybe not. I know I've kind of gone through that of like, all right, God, I will leave you real, but like, I don't see you in my life. Where are you? That could be a tough season for sure.
Seriously. And like that's the hard thing when you've seen God move. Of like, I grew up in like a charismatic church, so I've like seen healings, I've seen like the miraculous happen. So I was like, dang, like I know you're real.
Right.
But what, like, where are you? You know what I mean? And so coming to terms with how those two worlds actually intersect and how they blend together and they're not contradicting.
Right. Because you can almost see them like working in other people's lives around you, but you're like, all right, when's it my turn? Like, yeah.
And then coming to terms with the fact that it's not a yes for everybody.
Right.
And the big thing, like looking back at it now, I'm kind of glad. Not like, oh yeah, I'm glad crappy crap happened. But like, I'm glad in the fact of people that aren't saved. Like if I were to assume that just because I was saved, that means that I should have had a really good life. If that would have actually happened, then the people that I'm around now who aren't saved, that wouldn't have that cop out of like, oh, well, I'm saved, I shouldn't have this happening, then I wouldn't be able to speak into their lives in any way, shape, or form because I've never experienced anything like they have. And so because of those trials and because of those hard times, I think it becomes more relatable to people instead of having a picture perfect life.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. Was there anything you wish you would have known before you made your decision to follow Jesus?
I wish someone would have stressed how much good community and intentional community actually helps you in your walk of faith.
No kidding.
Because, again, pointing back to the fact that a lot of my family wasn't saved, there was a lot of unrealistic expectations put on me of like, oh, well, you're a Christian and you're doing that. So that is like their favorite phrase to pull out on me.
Yeah.
And then like growing up in school and even as I got older with coworkers, they would say some really not fun things of like stereotypical Christians. And I was like, well, that's not me, first of all. And you said that in front of someone to make me look bad on purpose. Like one time I was working at Burger King and one of my coworkers was like, oh, well, you hate gay people, right? And I was like, well, no, first of all. But he only said that because there was a couple in the restaurant. There was two females. And I was like, why would you say that? Like, it was totally out of pocket, too.
Right.
And I was like, I don't get it. And so, like, a combination of all these different things constantly happening, I was, like, really lonely at a certain point because I never took the time to be like, oh, I need friends in my like-minded faith to, like, rebalance off of. Because otherwise, it was just me fighting the rest of the world, and I was, like, drowning at certain points in my life, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Did you, I don't know if your experience was anything like mine. Like, I knew having solid Christian community was really important and really helpful, but like, I really struggled to find that. Did you ever have that experience?
I definitely have. Like, since I've learned that I needed it, I was like, okay, now how do I intentionally start this?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I had to learn was that intentional community doesn't find you, you find it or you make it. So in college specifically, that's when like, oh, I'm in a whole new state with a whole new group of people and I know literally nobody. And so I realized as I was praying one day, God was like, sometimes if you can't find it, you have to be it. And so I was just like, okay, I want someone to like hang out with and do hikes with once a week. And so I was like, hey, I'm gonna ask, like I asked so many people, 3 of them responded, but it's like taking that step of like, I might be rejected, but I need intentional community, so I'm gonna take the risk because if this is what is needed, so, then why would you not do it?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's, I don't know, it's crazy how crucial community is in our everyday lives. Like, looking back, it's like, man, how did I go that long without community? And especially like a community of believers around me, like, was so hard.
And looking back at it, you can tell even if you did have a community or lack thereof, of the difference it would make. Like, I was getting by, but was I thriving in those seasons? Like, sure, like I could pay all my bills, I can meet XYZ criteria, but the reality is like, it's depressed half the time. I was like dealing with so many other hidden things that no one else could see, and I had no one else to talk to.
Right.
So it's like, even if you're like doing okay on the outside, most of the time if you don't have a good place of community, you're not doing well holistically.
Yeah, I would say I definitely was in that spot of not doing very well because I didn't have community. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's totally accurate. I guess with that knowledge of like now knowing how important community is, would you have done anything differently, especially like in those early stages of putting your faith in Jesus and choosing to follow him?
Yeah, I definitely think that on top of like, okay, so there was a period of my life where I had that holier than thou kind of mindset, especially in like my early teens.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You gotta love being young and ignorant. But I was like, I wish if I could do anything different, like going back, like I know that some of that was out of a place of hurt, and I know that some of that stuff, some of like my anger spouts throughout the years too, was out of a place of hurt. But I would wish that I could go back and be like, okay, first of all, ask for help. Like intentional community doesn't always look like consistent week to week or day to day help partnership, but community also looks like, oh hey, pastor so and so, like this is what I'm dealing with, or hey mom, I think I need a therapist right now because I'm really battling through some things. Like community is more than just friendship. It is so much more than that. It's way more complex.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's what I would have told myself then.
Yeah, I think I would be with you too. Like I think for the longest time I went without getting any counseling or anything because I don't know, there's just a stigma against it for whatever reason, but like do it. It's worth it.
We all need it. On
Exactly.
Top of it. It's like I don't understand what the stigma is.
Exactly.
Like even if you don't have stuff going on, like why would you just throw away the chance of being a better human?
Right.
Like
like it's okay to ask for help, and it's like we're designed to be in community with each other. We're designed to walk life with each other. Like I don't know why it's hard to ask for help, because even after going through counseling, sometimes I do have a really hard time asking other people for help, like when I know I need it, but
it's hard.
It is, but it's a good thing.
It's the other part of like we're human. You know, and then like another thing I wish someone would have told me is that just because you're working on something and you overcome something doesn't mean that same thing doesn't come back in a different way. I think it was, what's his name? The pastor from Elevation.
Stephen Furtick?
Stephen Furtick. I was reading his Unqualified book. And he mentioned that even if you're working on something, there's a new depth to that something. So like, let's say I'm working on forgiveness. And like for me, like, let's say if I'm trying to forgive a parent for something wrong that they've done. Okay, like I have overcome that. I have a relationship with my parent now. Okay, but what does forgiveness now look like today? Like, am I grudgingly holding on to things against my friends? Am I grudgingly holding it against things with my siblings? And if so, okay, I fixed that. Okay, now what's the next level? When a stranger does something to me, do I forgive them or am I holding grudges? So it's like there's depths of every attribute of God that we're trying to learn. And so sometimes it's easy to forget and we get like mad at ourselves. And
totally.
Like it's complex. It's more than just a one-time process.
It is. But, I like that. How has that decision like changed your life?
I definitely think for me, going back to like the original testimony of realizing that God wasn't hiding, he never left, like he was always there. For me, that specifically correlated with just some mental health things of like having a purpose to keep going. Like if nothing else, if all else failed, like I always had a reason to keep going. And at the end of the day, I think sometimes that's the biggest thing that our faith can do for us, is give us the motivation to conquer a new day or to challenge us for a new task, is like, well, would this please my God? Yes or no? And if so, do it. I like that. What did your life look like before you knew Jesus? Like, was that different at all than it is now? Absolutely. My family loves to bring it up all the time. Again, I kind of wish that we could like have them here, because I think when I tell people how I used to be versus how I am now, they're like, oh, no, you weren't. And I was like, yeah, I'm really glad you met like after high school me and not pre-high school me.
Yeah.
I was just at a lunch with my family for my grandma's retirement, and my aunt was like, "You were just so mean," and I was like, "I know, like I get it. I realize that now."
Yeah.
And I think that's the best word to describe me completely surrendering my life to Jesus. Because like we talk about, like hurt people.
Absolutely.
And undealt with trauma just leads to us like firing at people, projecting our feelings on other people. And that was happening a lot when I was younger, of like, yeah, it was not a good time. I'm grateful a lot of people did not have to meet that version of me.
Fair enough. I can understand that. How would you say, like, you see God in your life now? Like, how is he working in your life?
Now, so just graduated college, right? The lovely thing about meeting your goals is that people expect new things out of you.
Right.
And sometimes, with just life in general, or because of circumstances, their expectations of you or your own expectations of you don't quite line up with reality. And so I've been really trying to place myself in what has God created me as a human to be.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, sure, I know that what my expectation is. I know what positions I'm expected to fill. I know what actions or areas of the church I'm expected to fill. But in reality, if I'm meant to be this specific thing for God as a human being, what is that and how do I follow that? And so as I've been kind of like going down that trail, I've realized that first of all, and the biggest thing of all, is that we as humanity are meant to receive God's love and show that love to humans and back to God.
Yeah.
And so if all else fails and we're doing that one thing, then it doesn't really matter what accolades we have or what achievements we have. Because if we're filling all these other positions and we're not doing that, then it's worthless.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I'm making myself learn and be okay with, of the simplicity of the gospel of like, okay, I'm supposed to be saved, and I'm helping others come to that point of salvation as well.
Yeah. Has that changed over time at all? Like,
yeah, I think it does, because there's like two spectrums of the matter of like your extreme of like, oh, well, I don't have to do anything for God action wise.
Okay.
Like I don't have to serve at a church. I don't have to, and I've definitely been in that category. Let's be honest. And there's also like I need to do everything and anything I can possibly do to further the kingdom of God.
Right.
Right. And so we like live in two tensions. And it's like learning to find the middle, but also realizing that sometimes, again, with the complexity of life, sometimes we are meant to be more here, but also sometimes we're meant to be more over here.
Yeah.
Like we don't just ride the middle road all the time. Like that's also not the ideal life and walk with Christ. Because sometimes there's like, I need you to be a pioneer or something, and you're going to take on extra stuff.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you're burnt out. So I'm going to need you over here so I can restore you, because I'd rather restore you than lose you.
Exactly. And like riding the extremes is
not right.
Almost dangerous.
Yeah. I'm like, you can't stay at 100 miles an hour.
Exactly.
Like you're going to hit a stop sign.
And you're going to hit it hard.
Yep.
And it's going to be hard to get up after that.
Yeah.
I've been there. It's not fun.
No, it's not. I'm like, we love burnout, as in we hate it. We absolutely try to avoid it at all costs.
Yes. But then on the other side of the coin, like, if you're not serving, if you're not
activating your faith.
Exactly. If you're not constantly trying to read the word and pray, like,
then what are you saved?
Exactly.
Like, and again, there's like seasons, right? Like
right.
You might have 2 or 3 months where the Lord's like, okay, I'm calling you in a time of stillness. Cool. That's fine.
Right.
But when months become years and becomes a lifetime, that's where we have an issue.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a religious thing. Like, you're not doing enough, so you're not going to get to heaven because of that. It's like, if you have a relationship with someone, like, that's constant communication, right?
Active engagement.
Exactly. Because what happens if that's not happening?
The relationship
it just falls apart and it's non-existent. So that's how it is with God. Is it's like you have to be putting in the work to continue that relationship, because it's a two-way
Yeah.
relationship. It's not just God talks to you or whatever, right?
Yeah. Or even like this, I'm like, if I'm just talking to you, it's not a conversation, you're just listening.
Yeah.
I'm like, if we're both talking though, I'm saying something, you're responding to that something, you say something, I respond to that something, like that's a conversation. It's active listening with active participation. It's not one or the other.
Exactly. Have there been any like stories specifically in the Bible that have impacted your faith? And if there have been, like, why specifically those ones?
I've had quite a bit because, again, seasons. We love that word.
Absolutely.
Seasons. I'm like,
a lot
there's
of those.
always, and if you're in a constant relationship with Christ, He's
Mhm.
gonna bring out a different part of His Word to help you get through that season.
Yeah.
Right. And so, growing up as like a younger child, obviously Esther.
Okay.
She's like one of the few female rock stars of the Bible.
Mhm.
And so, like, my big thing when I was little with her was that she was an orphan, right? Like, she was the total nobody who lived, and God called her to be somebody, not just for her own glory, but so
Right.
that way her people could be saved. And so, in
Yeah.
that same way, when I was younger, I'm like, I was probably more aware than I should have been of, like, specifically because I'm like part of the Chicano Latina community. I was like, I saw the problems that our community had, and
Yeah.
God was like, okay, if I could use her, I could use you to help your people too.
Totally.
And so that was one that I clung on for a very long time. That's probably the biggest one, I would say, that has consistently come up throughout my life.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Yeah, I think that about does it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we hope that helps. The goal with these is to help you guys kind of learn from our experiences, and hopefully some of that can be applied to your life. If you ever have questions, please come talk to us. We would love to talk to you. But yeah, with that, we will see you guys next week. Have a good one.